Hello again, gamers. Welcome back for another episode of Grokking Battletech. I'm the board game captain, and today I'm going to be telling you how to grok the Scarabus. So I want to start by giving a big thank you to one of my regular viewers, Luke Dudley, who requested that I cover the Scarabus in an episode of Grokking Battletech. So Luke Dudley, this episode is for you. Also, I want to say I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. There's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com. There's also a link to my Teespring store where you can get yourself some cool Board Game Captain merch. And there's a link to my Patreon if you're in a position to and would like to support the channel. So, the Scarabus. Now, the Scarabus is a light mech. It is 30 tons. It is super fast. It was designed by a small mech design firm over on Solaris. But later, they sold the rights to make it to other manufacturing plants. But there are only two, and that's right, you heard me right, two canon versions of the Scarabus. But let's take a look at them, and we're going to discuss them. Now, I personally do feel that the two canon versions that there are the first one is good, and the second one is frickin' great. So I want to talk about these, and I'm going to talk about a custom version. I'm also going to talk about a lance I would make with these, as well as a recommended mech warrior for my favorite version of the Scarabus. All right, so first let's discuss the basic version of the Scarabus. Now, the basic version of the Scarabus is the SCB-9A. That is Sierra Charlie Bravo-9 Alpha. Now, this is a 30-ton mech with a walking speed of 10, a running speed of 15. So this thing is fast, really quite fast. It is, for a clan invasion scout mech, yeah, it's got some good speed. Next, we have it armed with a tag, which is great for spotting for semi-guided missiles, or if you're playing with advanced rules artillery, which makes this a really great spotter mech, better than even a normal light mech for spotting for indirect fire with the semi-guided missiles, like I said. We also have a Guardian Ecm Suite. So this also is really cool for it being a scout mech, because as you run into range with that Guardian Ecm Suite of your enemy, who has some cool electronic warfare components like Artemis 4s or possibly a C3 network, you can disrupt that. And this is a great mech for disrupting enemy C3 networks and Artemis 4 fire and things like that. Next, we have, and this is an interesting addition for this version of the Scarabus, we have a Hatchet. Now, the Hatchet only does 6 damage with the Scarabus 9A. So it's a little underwhelming, but wait till we get to the next version. I'll explain in a moment. Then we have 2 medium lasers and 2 small lasers, which is actually a fair amount of firepower for such a small, light, fast mech. Now, the armor is a little lacking, but a big part of what's going to keep this mech alive is its speed and maneuverability. But it has 10 armor on each side torso with 12 on the center torso, the full 9 on the head, so at least you got the full protection for your mech warrior. You have only 9 armor on each arm, however, which is a little weak, considering that all of your main weapon systems, the medium lasers, the small lasers, and the Hatchet are all on the arms. And we have 13 on each leg. On the rear torsos, we have 5 and 4 respectively. And then for heat sinking capacity, we have 10 single heat sinks, which, believe it or not, single heat sinks is all you need for this thing. It's actually fairly heat efficient. If you fire everything and run, you actually only do 10 heat. So that's enough for it to be totally heat efficient. Now, looking at this mech, my general feeling on this mech is this is a really good scout mech. The disruption ability, thanks to the Guardian Ecm Suite, combined with the tag ability and its ability to spot for indirect semi-guided missiles, is great. And let me remind you a little bit on semi-guided missiles. So the thing is, if you spot with a tag for semi-guided missiles, the attacker gets to ignore the target's movement modifier, which, I mean, that alone is huge. And if firing indirectly, which is what you want to do with this, you also get to ignore the indirect fire modifier, the terrain modifier, the spotter movement modifier. I mean, this is crazy. Once it hits, it fires as per normal. You check on the cluster hits table as per normal. It doesn't get to have extra hit like with an Artemis 4, but semi-guided missiles become far more accurate when dealing with a tag-mounted scout mech as your spotter. So this is fantastic. So I just wanted to talk about that briefly. Now, yeah, this is a really good scout mech for those reasons. However, after looking at this, and this is a mech I personally have never used, and was like, how did I overlook this? While looking at this mech, my immediate thought was, you know what I would do with this when making my custom mech? I would give it, triple strength my armor, because the triple strength my armor would let it go a little bit faster, and also the triple strength my armor would double the damage on the hatchet, which would be enough to make it a head capping weapon. Then I went and looked at the only other version, and guess what they gave it? So the other version is the SCB-9T. That's T as in Tango. So this version has triple strength my armor. That's the basically the only upgrade of this versus the other version. It still has the exact same weapon loadout. It still has the exact same armor in every area, and the same 10 single heat sinks. So now this is the one that, in my opinion, is the auto-include. If you're going to take a Scarabus, take the 9T. This is head and shoulders above the other version because you can move up to 16 hexes once you've heated up to 9 heat. You also get to use your hatchet as actually a head capping weapon and have the chance, when running in and doing all the other things I already talked about, you have also the chance to bring a enemy mech, regardless of size, down in one hit. Now, to remind you, the hatchet uses the standard to hit table for just fire, like when you're firing normal weapons at an enemy. However, if you take a +4 difficulty modifier with the hatchet, when targeting your enemy, you can use the punch location table instead, which makes you have a 1 in 6 chance with this mech of head capping your enemy, which is amazing. That is a huge advantage, and the +4 difficulty can be worthwhile, especially if you're using a custom mech warrior in this mech that makes their piloting skill roll very good and very accurate. It could possibly have a good chance to still hit the target, which we will be taking, and I'll talk about in a minute. So that's a huge benefit. In addition, again, we're talking about 16 movement points when running with the Scarabus. That, by the way, is a +4 difficulty modifier for your enemy to hit you. So keep in mind, if you have an enemy with an average inner sphere ability, for gunnery, that's normally hitting on 4s. And then you add +4 to that, that goes all the way up to 8s. And then let's say they walked, now we're up to 9s. Let's say you're at medium range, that's 11s. So generally speaking, these modifiers can add up very, very quickly, and the speed is going to be what keeps you alive. Granted, again, the armor is not great on the Scarabus, but against most enemies, they're going to have a very hard time connecting with the Scarabus as long as you keep running, keep moving, keep, running in and out, into combat, away from combat. Move as fast as possible. You never want to slow down with this thing. You want to maintain that +4 difficulty to hit you. Okay, so yeah, that is the Scarabus. Again, the Scarabus 9T possibly can head cap with its axe. It can spot for semi-guided missiles and indirect fire. It can also spot for artillery if you're using advanced rules. And it's got actually not a bad punch with its own firepower, with its 2 medium lasers and its 2 small lasers. That's not bad for a 30-ton mech. And it's quite heat efficient. So here's what you want to do with this thing. So to get it, you got to get it heated up. So you can turn off the heat sinks. So you want to start the game with 9 of your heat sinks off. And what you want to do is on the first turn, you want to run and fire everything. And remember, you can fire at an empty hex. You can just fire to heat up. You can fire at the woods. You can fire at something out of range. You're allowed to do these things. So you're going to heat up 9. At the end of that phase, you're going to turn back on all your heat sinks. So from then on, you are going to run and fire all those weapons every turn, which will maintain the 9 points of heat. 9 points of heat is where you want to be at with the Scarabus, so that you will get the extra speed and you will get the double damage. And then you're going to use it again to run in close, isolate individual mechs from your enemy's lance. You're going to spot for indirect fire, and you're going to run up on slower mechs in their rear and hit them with that hatchet. Either if you don't have a really good chance to hit, either just hit him in the rear and hope to get him in maybe one of the torso sections, which is very likely, or if you can and you have a really good chance to hit, you're going to aim for the upper body and get that 1 in 6 chance of just head capping that enemy mech. And bringing down an assault mech with a light mech is one of the most satisfying things to do in this game. So there you go. That is how I would use the Scarabus. So now I want to talk about a custom version of the Scarabus that I made. Now this was a little difficult, and the reason this was difficult is that I already think the SCB 9T is basically perfection for what the Scarabus was designed to do. So, but what I decided to do was make a Scarabus to use in a lance where you're not going to have a lot of indirect fire, where you're not going to have a bunch of mechs with LRMs, that you're going to swap out all their ammo for semi-guided missiles, which again, remember, semi-guided missiles really don't have a downside. So if you're using a mech with tag, you might as well swap out all of your regular missiles as long as you don't have the Artemis 4s with semi-guided missiles. But this is a mech where you're just making a lot of mechs that are going to run up and hit the enemy. This is a version of the Scarabus that is made to use a lance without a lot of LRMs. So this is a mech from my own personal mech design firm, KIWF, named after the last initials of its 4 founding members, but affectionately nicknamed Kill It With Fire by its fans. This is the Scarabus SCB 9T KIWF. So basically what I just did with this Scarabus is I took off the medium lasers, the small lasers, and the tag, and I replaced all of that with 2 medium pulse lasers to make it more of an interceptor mech. Otherwise, I kept it exactly the same as the 9T. Again, really, the only idea with this was to make it more of an interceptor and make it have weapons that are even more likely to hit the target while removing the tag, because this is meant to be used for a lance where you do not have a bunch of LRMs. Now, one of the other benefits of this is I did actually reduce the battle value slightly. The 9T is at 926 battle value, but my version is at 913. So that was an unforeseen benefit of this small change. So next, I want to talk about what mech warrior I would put in my favorite version of the Scarabus, which is the 9T, before discussing the lance I'm going to build for it that is meant to be used with the Scarabus 9T with this mech warrior. So the mech warrior I would put in the cockpit of the Scarabus is Christine Ott. Now, Christine Ott has a gunnery skill of 1 and a piloting skill of 2. Now, I want to talk about this real quick because this seems very risky, and it is. You're putting an incredibly high-skilled mech warrior into a light mech. Now, your opponent very much is going to probably give these skills to balance things out to a heavy or assault mech on their side, so that can be dangerous. But the idea here, again, is to isolate certain enemy mechs in heavy terrain. This is going to be a lance that is really designed to be used in a lot of heavy terrain, canyons, city fights, lots of forests, etc., and take them out while their other enemies can't see you. And because you're spotting for the rest of your lance, the rest of your lance can fire on the one mech you're trying to isolate. So the abilities that Christine Ott has are 4-cost abilities. So this is going to be used when you're using a 4-cost mech warrior, and they have Blood Stalker and Maneuvering Ace. So I want to start with Maneuvering Ace. Maneuvering Ace allows you to do lateral shifts like a quad mech, and also apply a -1 modifier to piloting skill rolls to avoid skidding. So again, one of the main ways this lance is designed to be used is in city fights, so avoiding being able to help avoid skidding and falling down. Really, that -1, it makes it almost impossible. Plus, being able to make lateral shifts like a quad mech means this mech's going to be even faster when even having to make turns and quick lateral shifts while moving throughout a city. So that'd be really, really good for the mech warrior of the Scarabus. Now, the other of the 2 abilities with Christine Ott is Blood Stalker. Now, this one is a little interesting. So it gives you a -1 to hit modifier against a single enemy and a +2 against all other enemies until you take down that single enemy. So the idea with this lance is for you to give that -1 to hit modifier to your enemy's scout mech, your enemy's super fast mech, like a Locust, something that's going to give you a +4 or even a +5 to hit it, getting an extra -1 to hit it when you're going to target it with the tag, so that your LRMs with their semi-guided missiles can come in and completely ignore its movement modifiers. A super light, fast enemy mech will be torn down in a turn or 2 of lots of LRM fire from this lance. So yeah, that would be actually really, really useful. And once you take out that small light mech, the other mechs are back to their normal your normal ability to target them with your Scarabus. All right, so for the lance, I decided to do a fire lance. Now, the fire lance, if you do not recall, is the lance where at least 75% of them have to be missile boats or snipers. Now, for the other 3 mechs in this lance, I have 2 missile boats and a sniper. And the bonus ability is that at the beginning of each turn, up to 2 fire lance units may receive the sniper ability, which halves the extra difficulty modifier for range. So again, this is since you can pick different mechs every turn, this is going to really allow you to pick the mechs that are going to best take advantage of this, especially after you hit someone with tag. You can use this ability to reduce the difficulty to hit the target even more and make those LRMs super likely to connect to the mech that you are painting with the target acquisition gear. So in addition to the Scarabus, the 9T that we already talked about, along with Christine Ott in the cockpit, here's what we have. So the first mech in the lance is one of the missile boats, is the longbow LGB-7Q. Now this, by the way, is a 6,000 battle value clan invasion lance. I want to focus in on the clan invasion time period for this. And again, intended to be used in heavy terrain. So the longbow 7Q has a ton of LRMs, and we're going to swap out all of its ammo for semi-guided missiles. We have 2 LRM-20s, 2 LRM-5s, and 2 medium lasers. So this thing is fairly cheap for the amount of firepower it has, because we've got like no case systems. We only have single heat sinks, but it has 22 single heat sinks, so that's plenty good. And, you know, the armor's okay, but it's not amazing for an assault mech, for an 85-ton mech. It keeps the battle value fairly low. It's 1618. You're going to take this, walk forward a little bit, park it in a good spot where you can just stay still and give indirect fire, but stay out of sight of the enemy. And yeah, and whoever you paint is going to get lit up with those 2 LRM-20s and 2 LRM-5s. Next, we have a little bit of a more maneuverable mech to move around and again give some covering fire, and that is the Catapult CPLT C4C. This is a clan invasion era catapult with 10 double heat sinks. Now this thing has 2 LRM-20s, a Beagle active probe, depending on if you're using doing any sort of scenario where the Beagle active probe could be beneficial. And it also has a large laser and a small pulse laser just in case it needs to do some direct firing. But again, this is one that mostly is just going to find a good spot, though it can redeploy a little better with its 4 jumping ability, but it's going to find a good spot where it can rain down death with its semi-guided missiles from its 2 LRM-20s once you start painting targets with your tag. The final mech is a mech that can both rain down a little bit of death and help back up all those LRM-20s from the other 2 mechs, while also slowly walking and maneuvering itself between your 2 missile boats that are going to stay further back, so that if anything gets past your scout mech, your Scarabus, it can come on in and intercept them and hit them with a lot of direct fire, and that is the Sunder. Now, this is the one sniper mech in this lance. It's got a 4-6 movement. It's got 15 double heat sinks, so it's got 30 heat sinking capacity, which is plenty for this thing. And it's got a ludicrous amount of firepower. This thing is a 90-ton assault mech. With the 4-6 is actually pretty fast for a 90-ton assault mech. So this thing, it's got a Gauss rifle. So ouch, yeah, head capping weapon. It's got an ER-PBC. It's got 2 medium pulse lasers for something fast tries to get past your scout mech, and you need to really be able to hit it. And then it has 3 LRM-5s, which you can use those to back up the 4 LRM-20s and 2 LRM-5s from the other 2 mech, again, to rain down tons and tons of clusters of missiles on whoever got painted with the target acquisition gear. So there you have it. This is the lance I would make for the Scarabus. Now, again, the idea here is to do city fighting, canyon fighting, heavy terrain fighting. I've been doing a number of lances that were made to fight in heavy terrain, but I was always doing lots of lances that really focused in on jumping in behind enemies and hitting them. I thought it'd be fun to do a lance that took a totally different strategy. This one takes the strategy of building completely around that target acquisition gear on the Scarabus, and instead of jumping around and outmaneuvering your enemy, you keep your distance with most of the lance, you isolate a single enemy with the Scarabus, you paint him, and you rain fire down on him. And then mid-game, the Sunder comes in and joins the fight and starts duking it out with whatever's left of your enemy lance. Hopefully you've taken out 1 to 2 of your enemy mechs by the time you hit mid-game, but then this guy can go toe-to-toe with your enemy's biggest, heaviest mechs with that Gauss rifle, the ER-PPC, and the medium pulse lasers. Really, really powerful mech. And again, while you're doing that, you're still raining fire down on that mech from your catapult and your longbow, thanks to painting it with the Scarabus, as long as your Scarabus is still alive. There you have it. What do you guys think of my lance I made for the Scarabus? What do you think of my favorite version of the Scarabus and my custom-made version of the Scarabus? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you'd like to request I cover a specific mech in an episode of Grokking Battletech, again, I'm trying to do all of the mechs from the earlier time periods, anything from the Star League era through the Civil War era, before I move on to the later time periods, because I generally like to play in those eras. Feel free to request them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode of Grokking Battletech and you'd like to see me do more episodes like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Kaptain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.